Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and thanks for watching. Well, it's days before the big voting. Everyone is excited about the election on Tuesday. We're going to do an election wrap-up, and then we're going to hear from Ted Leonard from the AAA. He's going to talk gasoline prices are down. What does all that mean? That and more following these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome to the program. Well, we're all going to talk fast. This is going to be an exciting program. Lightning rounds, rapid fire. I couldn't have two better guests. Sitting across from me, Pete DeCoursey, Bureau Chief with Capitolwire.com. And, of course, Fred Anton, President and CEO of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Both analysts, both experienced pros. They understand this state. Peter DeCoursey, presidential election. Does John McCain have a chance in Pennsylvania?
At the end of the day, he's going to make it a lot closer because, like Republicans always do in this state, Republicans always chop off 60% of the last poll lead.
Yeah.
The problem for McCain is that last poll lead is 10, 11 points. And so, I see this as a 3 or 4 point election.
Really? That close?
Oh, I think Obama probably wins, but I think it'll be a lot closer to 2 than it will be to 10.
All right, Fred.
Terry, there are two factors here which may not be reflected in the polls. One is race, and the other is age. Of course, everyone's questioning what race is going to do in this election, how voters are going to be affected by race, whether voters are going to vote on the basis of race, and also there's questions whether the pollsters can reach the young voters who have cell phones and who...
Two good points.
So I don't know
so
whether...
you think there's uncertainty, is that your point?
I think there's uncertainty, and based on the way McCain and Palin are showing up in Pennsylvania, they are just concentrating on Pennsylvania.
Well, they don't have any choice because it's either Pennsylvania or die. John McCain can't win the presidency of the United States without Pennsylvania.
Absolutely.
Am I right about that?
Tom Ridge spent 3 days last week touring Pennsylvania.
Governor Ridge, remember him? Go ahead.
The Republican governor, probably the most popular Republican in the state right now, spent 3 days touring and going around saying we have to win Pennsylvania. There is no way we can win the presidency without Pennsylvania. And so absolutely he has to. And again, as Fred said, we don't know who the extra people are going to show up.
Yeah.
In 2004, we set the all-time record for turnout in the presidential election at 5.7 million.
Yep.
Estimates are we're going to break that record by 300,000 to 800,000 voters.
I think you're right about that. And Fred, your point is we're not quite sure of who that electorate is finally going to be. Is that right?
That's right. And also, there's been a tremendous move away from the Republican Party, a tremendous registration of Democrats and independents, and how these independent votes might break is a big question.
All right, let's turn to the Attorney General's race. Man, it is the most visible of the statewide races, and they aren't very visible. Do you both agree with that?
They're less visible in most places than a state Senate race. The 4 or 5 hot state Senate races have much more TV ads and more visibility than the AG race.
Is it all the clutter of the presidential race, more advertising in PA than any other state in the union in the presidential election? Is it driving these row offices? I want to at least
$2 million doesn't buy you very much in a statewide election anymore, and that's what these guys are spending.
All right, Fred.
Tom Corbett.
Go ahead.
Tom Corbett has much more visibility and I believe much more voter identification than Morganelli. Tom Corbett got a tremendous amount out of the prosecution of these Democratic House members, got a tremendous amount of free media. He's generally gotten very good editorial comment on that. I think even if Pennsylvania goes for Obama, the voters will split their tickets. Many of them will feel...
And Fred, the predator... help me out. Fraud or internet unit that he has, these prosecutions, health care, child predators.
His anti-child predator unit.
And that's been high profile, right or wrong?
That's been high profile. It's not clear how much voters actually sort of think that John Morganelli, if elected, would like.
All right.
Nobody thinks he would not prosecute child offenders.
Only way he loses, tidal wave.
Yeah,
the Democratic tidal wave sweeps the
unless
state.
Obama's at 8 to 10.
Go ahead.
Unless Obama's at 8 to 10, it's hard to see how Morganelli wins.
But Fred's right. Big ticket splitting state. Fred.
Big ticket splitting state.
But it's a bad year to be an R.
All right. There you go. Congress. 11 Democrats, 8 Republicans. A big switch in 2006. The hot congressional races coming up after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Pennsylvania Medical Society, doctors and patients, preserve the relationship. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association, business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program. All right, here we go. The hot congressional races. Boy, you wouldn't think we'd have any, but up in the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton area in the 10th CD, we got Paul Kanjorski, a longtime Democrat, fighting for his life against Lou Barletta, the mayor of Hazleton, the immigration guy. Peter, what's going to happen there?
That's going to be a very close race. Republicans are very confident that. Republican State Committee and Republican National Committee, the congressional committees have poured a lot of effort into there. They're ahead in the polls, but at the end of the day, the problem there is that Lou Barletta is too conservative for that old Democratic district. And right now, what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing is that Kanjorski holds on by the skin of his chinny chin chin.
Fred,
but that's one where Barletta, that's the best hope Republicans have for a pickup in Congress.
I think that may be true. Fred's shaking his head. Go ahead.
I'm feel very uncertain about this election, but I feel that Barletta is going to win. He's ahead in the polls. He has not endorsed McCain. Kanjorski has a lot of problems. Kanjorski has some problems that long-term incumbents have when they become overconfident of their district. And I think the voters will retire him.
All right, I'm going to move up to the 3rd Congressional District. Phil English, a longtime incumbent who's had, in 2006, just, won, 54, 55. Wasn't the kind of big victory you'd normally get.
And he was running against an absolute joke of an opponent. And so now they've got a good opponent against him, and I'm going to go against the conventional. The conventional wisdom is that English is done, and that Kathy Dahlkemper, the Democrat who knocked out the party's favorite choice in the primary, is going to win. But I'm told that the polls are again tightening, that English is a little bit ahead. I think Phil English is a kind of Arlen Specter type politician who could hang on. I think that's a dead heat
now.
Right
The
now.
Republicans were worried about that. I think Fred and maybe one of you two can straighten me out on this. I think that was the first district that the Republican Congressional Campaign Committee ran commercials in early in the summer in the country. I remember that, but at any rate,
there's been concern about this seat for some time, and Phil's worked hard. I don't think Phil has the baggage that some of these other long-term congressmen have. For example, Kurt Weldon in Delaware County. Right. I think Phil
had the baggage in the race that Sustak won 2 years ago.
Yes.
But Phil's also been more loyal to the House Republican leadership than those Southeastern guys were, and Dahlkemper is doing a good job at tagging him with it. I think that race is very close.
But it is one place where the Obama factor won't be as important. Do you all agree there? Because
I disagree, because Obama will turn out every person who could possibly vote Democratic, and if they stick around for Dahlkemper is one of those races, and we'll talk about a couple of others in the State House later, who, if they win, will win because of Obama, because Obama flushed out every Democrat who might ever vote.
I think if they vote for Obama, they'll go back
split their ticket.
But don't you agree that she'd have no shot if Obama wasn't going to set a turnout record?
Yes, I think that is a big factor. The turnout here, the turnout's going to be big.
Because there will be people turning out who never met Phil English, who never voted before.
Yes.
And that's why I think...
All right, before we go, guys, before we go to a break, we got to get into this race. Jack Murtha, longtime incumbent, subcommittee chair of the Defense Subcommittee and Appropriations Committee.
17 terms.
17 terms. sticks his proverbial foot in his mouth.
Multiple times.
76 years old.
Multiple times.
Calling
Western
serving Marines,
racist. Go ahead.
Calls his own voters racist, calls Marines who were later acquitted of the crime murderers. Then he calls his own folks rednecks.
After he called them racist.
After he called them racist.
He apologized and then called them
rednecks.
Go ahead.
And the conservative running against him, Bo Russell, has been a little bit of a Harold Stassen-like conservative perennial candidate joke. But he now has a dream team. He has Jeff Coleman doing his consulting. He has Peg Luksick, the former gubernatorial candidate, doing his field, and there is nobody better at whipping together a field operation. Peg Luksick has never had this much money to spend in her life.
So you're saying that this...
He raised $3 million.
Hold on. Murtha, Fred, is probably going to eke this one out. Disagree with me if you want. But he's in the fight for his proverbial life in a district that we shouldn't even be talking about.
That's right. He's been there too long.
Yeah.
He's been too comfortable. He feels that he can be too outspoken and too controversial, and that is a prescription for disaster.
Yeah. He also, however, on the positive side, can you walk a block in Johnstown and not find some pork he hasn't brought back?
I mean, you see his name on every third building.
Every third building.
Sure you do.
All right. The State House race is coming up. We'll be back in a moment, and we'll continue this. What is this, Election Day meltdown or something? Election preview. Back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back. Final segment with these guys, and we're going to bring Ted Leonard on. We're going to talk about gasoline prices, roads. He's the AAA guy. Insightful segment coming up. All right, State House. Let's go to the State Senate quickly. I'll start with you, Peter. Republicans, controlled by 4. They have 29 members. It looks like at the end of the day, Republicans will stay in control. Do you question that?
No, they're going to stay in control. They'll probably add a seat in Beaver County, where they'll pick up the seat of the retiring Senator Gerald Laval with Elder Vogel, who will probably beat Jason Petrella in an absolutely stunning upset in a district that should never elect a Republican.
But the big question, Central Pennsylvania, Dauphin County, is Senator Pecola. He's been something of a maverick in the caucus. Is he in trouble?
He's in a lot of trouble. He had to go to the guy he lost the Senate leadership by 1 vote to and get him to fund his campaign and give up control of his own campaign to his enemies who beat him for the Senate leadership in order to get funded the last 2 weeks. And he's probably going to squeak through because of the people that he hates saving him at the last minute.
All right, Freddie, you want to get in on this? Go ahead.
Jim Rhodes,
Jim Rhodes,
having died,
good point. Yeah.
and Jim Rhodes will remain on the ballot, and then there will be the question of whether Jim Rhodes, a Republican, will be reelected even though he has died.
And the answer is yes to that, I think.
Yes, but
it's still hard to say whether a dead Republican, even a dead, very well-respected Republican,
very popular guy,
can beat a live Democrat in Schuylkill County.
Okay. Fred, I want to turn to the State House. Democrats, one vote control. Man, there's all sorts of things going on. I want to start down in the Philly suburbs, a place you know best. Democrats are optimistic. They can pick up a couple seats there. We can talk about one in Bucks County at least, one in Chester for a retiring member.
Probably 2 in Chester.
Maybe 2 in Chester, and one in the eastern part, one in the western part. The tidal wave for Obama. What's going to happen in the Philly burbs?
Well, of course, the 2 seats in Philadelphia, John Purcell, former Speaker of the House, running against Rick Costello, a former head of the police union, that race could be very, very close.
I've not heard that before.
Yes, that can be very, very close. If there's a Democratic tidal wave in that district.
But in that district, there won't be a Democratic tidal wave because McCain's going to win that district.
Yeah,
and McCain's going to win all the northeast Philadelphia districts, Fred, and that's the only place that there are competitive races.
Go ahead.
And also, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I don't know whether McCain's going to win that district or not. The Democratic factor, I think, even though there may be a lot of racists in that district, and it is a white district, and the Section 8 housing and minority housing is a big issue in that district, still, D might cause them to...
How about the suburbs? Are the Democrats going to pick up some seats there?
The Democrats may very well do, they will do well in Montgomery County.
We have a minute left.
They're going to give up some seats in the West, and the big story of this cycle is going to be that Bonus Gate didn't matter. And how about the Majority Leader Bill DeWeese in the fight for his life against Greg Hopkins, a former, semi-pro? Is that the way to describe him? Minor league football player. DeWeese, at the end of the day, probably pulls through basically as a minor league version of Jack Murtha, and the people say
Democrats stay in control in the House.
By a seat or two, yes.
And then the questions becomes who are going to be the leaders, who's going to be the Speaker of the House.
Great way to end this, because we'll revisit that with you guys after the election, particularly when they get round to reorganization. Great update. Okay, stay with us. Gas prices falling. What does all that mean for you out on the roads? Back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Penn Future, where we believe that every environmental victory grows the economy, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Joining me is Ted Leonard, Executive Director of Pennsylvania AAA Federation. They're on the roads. They're watching out for us. Good to have you here, Ted.
Thanks, Terry.
All right, I want to do three things with you. One, I want to go to the price of gasoline, and it's dropped now, and I'm concerned that we're all going to go back to these bad ways, you know. What's going on with gasoline, and what advice do you have for drivers?
The price of gasoline, the drop has been historic. Today in Pennsylvania, the average price of regular unleaded is $2.59. Right. Around this area, it's at about $2.49, and I've seen it as low as $2.30 and as high as $2.60 around here. That's about a $1 drop over what we saw a month ago.
Wow.
In the price of gasoline. Obviously, the demand has fallen off. The U.S. Department of Energy today is going to come out with its inventory report, and the expectations are that that report is going to indicate that inventories are high, and that's going to put more pressure to drop the
well,
gasoline
things
price.
must be going great for us, because Hugo Chavez, I just read, is screaming, you know, the Venezuelan dictator, we won't call him a Democrat, is screaming because gasoline prices are down and it hurting his social programs. I don't think we care too much about what he says.
Well, that's interesting, because you know, there's the discussion on what is OPEC going to do, and of course, you know, some of the countries within OPEC are highly dependent on
that's right.
on oil revenue, and some aren't as dependent. So the discussion is going to be how much will OPEC cut production, and that'll be something we'll have to watch down the road.
Look, I want to go to the second issue. I mean, regulating gasoline, the state at the pumps, we do sort of, you buy a gallon, you get a gallon, but boy, we're woefully behind in at least 3 or 4, a couple of other areas that we ought to be regulating. I think we don't. And I know that the AAA has been working on legislation. Explain that for our viewers. This is pretty important stuff. Go ahead.
Well, you know, you and I have known each other about 15 years or so, and back when I first came into this organization, we started to work on legislation to test the quality of gasoline, what you get out of the pump. Right now, what we test today is that a gallon is a gallon, and that's it.
I think I know where you're heading with this.
Go back when we started working on this, we said, well, Pennsylvania is one of 7 states that doesn't test that you get the right octane level, that there's not water in the gasoline. And
so when you pull in there and it says 91 octane, it could be
87, could be 86. We don't really know. Well, today we're one of 3 states that does not test the quality of gasoline.
Do we test? I read somewhere where there's the business of dirt or other what do I want to say? Materials, sediment that could be in. Do we test for that, whether that's in gasoline or not?
No, we don't.
But some other states do, correct?
Well, most other states do. As I said, Pennsylvania is one of only 3 states that does not test the quality of gasoline. By the quality of gasoline, we mean not only that the octane is what you think you're buying, but that there's not this sediment and dirt, water, and what's going to become important down the road is what's the ethanol level.
Look, I think this is pretty important. I mean, these are things we go through in our daily lives. We don't think about.
It's a consumer protection issue for us.
Yeah, it really is. All right, I want to go to the third issue. It's something that the AAA has always been concerned about. I mean, I'm a member, by the way, full disclosure here. Teen driver safety. The young kids, newly permitted drivers and new drivers, disproportionate share of accidents. Talk about that and what needs to happen.
Well, a few years ago, Pennsylvania introduced a graduated driver license program in which we took a lot of steps to try and get young drivers more experience on the road before they actually got out there and did a lot more driving. What was done at that time was to increase the permit period. It was from 30 days to 6 months. It required 50 hours of driving with a parent and a few other things. One of the things we did not include in that program was to limit the number of passengers that young drivers carry. And what studies have found, what AAA studies and other studies have found, is the more passengers that a young driver has in the car, the more distracted they become. And
so in other words, there's a correlation. The more drivers, we're not saying that because the passengers, because you have a lot of passengers, you're necessarily going to have an accident, but there is a correlation. There's
a very high correlation between, and the more number of passengers, the more passengers you have, the higher that correlation is, the higher the chance is that you're going to be in an accident.
Yeah, before I let you go, there's been, occasionally we have this debate about raising the driving age to 18. I mean, that in this society today, that's not going to happen, is it?
No, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, look, I want to thank you for coming in. This has been a great update, and I think we'll have you get you back. I want to talk about that legislation at some point, particularly, what it is that ought to be done to protect the consumers when we're buying gasoline. I mean, I think that's just something that most of us just simply aren't aware of. I don't know that anybody is aware of this.
Sure.
At any rate, thanks for coming in.
All right, thanks, Terry.
All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And by the way, go and vote. Just once, go and vote. And as always, stay well, and you stay here.